It is day 172. Take a breath on that one of the second Trump administration. Donald Trump's new deadline for countries to make trade deals or face huge tariffs is now officially 3 weeks away from tomorrow. And tonight he is threatening a new whopping 35% tariff on goods from Canada, one of America's top 3 trading partners. Canada, the Great White North. And for those who are keeping score at home, thus far, the administration has published just 23 letters and announced 0 new trade deals. Today, he told NBC's Kristen Welker that he plans to impose blanket tariffs of 15 or 20% on all remaining countries. And his former vice president, Mike Pence, yes, Mike Pence is back. He is giving Trump's plans a major reality check, and he is saying it on the record. Watch this.
If we have a unilateral tariff of 10% on the American economy of all imported goods, that's 4 times the average tariff today. I saw Secretary Bessent speaking very glowingly about the projection is $300 billion in tariff revenue this year. Well, tariffs are a tax, and American importers and businesses and ultimately consumers pay almost all of that. And so literally a week after we managed to extend the Trump-Pence tax cuts and prevent a $2,000 tax increase on working families, the administration is right now boasting of the fact that that the average American household is going to see about $3,000 increase in the cost of goods because we're paying that.
That is correct. And you know who knows that is correct? Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Meanwhile, the U.S. is resuming deliveries of some weapons to Ukraine starting tomorrow. That is according to a U.S. official and a source familiar. It will be the first weapons delivery since Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth paused them, a decision that Trump claims he did not know about and has since reversed. Today, Trump's Secretary of State Marco Rubio also had a big day meeting with Russia's foreign minister. And the secretary came out of the meeting saying they exchanged what he called new ideas about how to end the war. But to be clear, Rubio met with an official from the country that invaded Ukraine, the same country that also just hours before those optimistic comments launched a massive attack on Kyiv, where more than 400 drones and missiles hit the Ukrainian capital. City officials there say the attack killed 2 and injured at least 17 others. While in Washington, both House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune said they are prepared to move forward with new sanctions on Russia. But of course, it will likely come down to whether or not President Trump supports that move. And tonight, the president said he will have a major statement on Russia come Monday. We got a lot to cover, so let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel tonight. Peter Baker joins us, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times. Daniela Diaz, a congressional reporter for Notice. And Nayyera Haq, former White House Senior Director and former State Department Senior Advisor. She is now the Assistant Dean for Syracuse Maxwell School in D.C. Mr. Baker, I turn to you first. The president is now making a big threat against truly our closest ally and neighbor, Canada. He is talking about raising a blanket tariff rate as high as 20%. Help me out. To me, this just seems like chaos. Chaos with no strategy or reason behind it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we had so many different threats, so many different deadlines, so many different announcements at this point that it's hard to know which one to take seriously. But if it turns out that we do impose a 20% tariff on Canada that actually goes into effect, that's going to have a major effect on consumer goods because we get a lot. Canada is one of our 2 largest trading partners along with Mexico. A lot of things come over the border there. And it's going to be seen on the shelves here in the United States. One of the reasons Donald Trump won the election last year was because of inflation, because people perceived prices to be going up too much under Biden, even though the inflation rate did come down by the time of the election. Well, a 20% tariff rate means on those goods coming over the border, it's going to be higher than the inflation rate at its worst under Biden, right? And I think that this is something that's going to shock a lot of consumers at some point if they start to see shelves emptying out and prices going up.
The key words are at some point. Daniela, let's talk about Mike Pence, the president's former VP, who on many, many issues still stands in line with President Trump. He broke it down today, saying all of the proposed tariffs are a tax, even the 10% baseline, and it is American consumers and businesses that will pay the cost. Mike Pence knows this. Republicans on the Hill know it. Treasury Secretary Bessent knows it, and yet they are still accepting that the president is misrepresenting the way these tariffs work.
I mean, Stephanie, to be clear, Pence is not the leader of the Republican Party anymore. You know, I remember when I was covering Mike Pence when he was the vice president, and it's a very different Republican Party now than the one he's currently criticizing and the moves that President Donald Trump is making. Look, obviously, he's going to come out and say that he does not agree with the decision that Trump is making to try to bring these countries to the negotiating table with these blanket tariffs. But it is interesting to see that he compares it to what Trump did his first administration, noting those differences in this interview with Bloomberg, saying, of course, when I was vice president, we did a completely different method to try to negotiate with countries on trade. And it seems that what President Donald Trump is doing this time around is not going to work. So hearing that from him is interesting, but it is notable that the Republican Party, those Congress members that I talk to on Capitol Hill every single day, Republicans, are still standing by the Donald Trump's method to try to bring these countries to the negotiating table, even our allies.
He also said something very interesting about China and how that what the president is doing on trade is hurting our own effort to rein in China, which is the purpose of this trade war to begin with, by going after our closest trading partners and not using them as our actual allies. Nayara, is this a consequence of Trump always feeling like he has to go big, go alone, and sort of doesn't need anyone? He's the man.
Absolutely. And you're seeing so much emotion and bravado in what usually ends up being a very calculated situation, right? You know, tariffs end up matching some other economic tools or some other pressure, ongoing negotiation with a country. But we see these changes in tariffs over and over again and levied against our allies, not our enemies. So that particularly Canada, it seems a bit more than baffling at this point, the bullying tactics against Canada, when China is effectively now running free across not only the African continent, but now building relationships in Europe and North Africa, if for no other reason than China is a stable partner, right? And that's part of the challenge here is the instability of the United States. The United States not being a reliable partner makes it easier for now for countries to actually go with a country like China, where they do not have basic values in common. The economic systems are different, but they'll do that, A, for the products that you can get from China that, frankly, everybody in the world at this point is dependent on, and B, because they know what they're getting and they think it'll be consistent.
Peter, I'm always glad you're here, but today when we got so much Russia news, I was especially excited. So bring us back to your Moscow days, because I need this explained, right? The president is now saying he's making a big Russia statement come next week. And at the same time, America is restarting our weapons shipments to Ukraine. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, you heard President Trump just this week express great consternation with Vladimir Putin, that Putin is giving us nothing but, and you can fill in the word here, it's not a word we usually say on television. And it may be that Donald Trump is the last person in Washington to recognize that Putin is trying to play the United States and not really interested in a peace deal. But he does seem to be recognizing that now. And that raises all kinds of questions. Does that mean then the bromance that he has had with Vladimir Putin over the last 10 years, really even longer than that, is in fact fraying or not? Will he take that frustration that he's feeling with Putin's resistance to a peace deal and do anything more for Ukraine? We're at the end of the assistance that was approved under Biden. The stuff that's going to Ukraine right now that he's restarted is stuff that was approved during the Biden administration. Trump has done nothing beyond what Biden did to help Ukraine. Is he going to, at some point, do that? Is he going to approve this new sanctions legislation that Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal are pushing through the Senate, which would punish Russia even further? It may be that's the announcement he has in mind. He likes leverage, obviously, and it may be his way of saying to Putin, you need to come back, otherwise I genuinely will come after you. We'll see if he follows through on that.
Nayyera, do you believe that this shows that the president's relationship with NATO is getting better, and perhaps his relationship with Putin, which many of us thought was sort of bulletproof, may actually be deteriorating?
Oh, I think this is a blip in the usual relationship that we've seen over multiple years between Trump and Putin, probably exacerbated by the fact that there's egg on Trump's face at this point, right? On one hand, having given so much to Putin, gone to our allies at the G7 and argued for the re-inclusion of Russia, saying that Russia has been unfairly punished all these years, to yelling at Zelensky. Like, there's a whole host of things that he's done to not only undermine Ukraine, but also to undermine the relationship with NATO. So this is actually the aberration in what we've come to know from Trump. Is it a welcome aberration? Yes. Is it probably driven by some kind of embarrassment about realizing that Putin has taken advantage of him? Yes. Whether or not it will stick, whether or not it'll actually benefit Ukraine is still a big question. At the end of the day, we were already, as a coalition, not doing enough for Ukraine to win the war. Kyiv has been bombarded in record ways in the last this last week in what is now a 3-year war. The United States had the opportunity to help Ukraine win. At this point, it's just even saving that the land they currently have will be considered a big deal.
Well, Johnson and Thune are now saying they are ready to go on Russia sanctions come, next week. But does any of this even matter, Daniela, if the president doesn't support the move?
Well, it seems that President Donald Trump is signaling for them to get behind this. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Speaker Mike Johnson, they wouldn't move ahead on this had they feel that they could get the support behind their Republican members and Donald Trump on an issue like this. That's the difference that we're seeing now, Stephanie, than even just a couple of weeks ago, is that they feel now they have the nudging from the president to move forward on this. And worth noting, Peter, of course, brought up that legislation from Senator Graham and Blumenthal, but that legislation has 80 senators already signed on to it. There is a lot of support for this measure in Congress already. So it's just a matter of putting this to a vote to see whether this could pass. But if there's one thing that Republicans tend to break on President Donald Trump, it is on the issue of Russia and supporting Ukraine. There's a lot of staunch Republicans who are staunch allies of President Donald Trump, like Lindsey Graham, who are speaking out and saying we need to act and support Ukraine on this issue and moving toward trying to, of course, set up these sanctions.
All right, Peter, we've got one more topic I want to cover before I let you go. Today, a judge blocked Trump's birthright citizenship order, restricting it once again. Can you explain to us what this means?
Yeah, so what the Supreme Court said just a few days ago was that individual district court judges cannot make universal national decisions on cases like this birthright citizenship challenge. In fact, it was on this birthright citizenship challenge that it made that decision. What they did say was the only way a federal district judge could apply a decision beyond the parties in front of him or her is if there was a class action lawsuit. And what the ACLU has done here said, fine, we're going to create a class action lawsuit. And the judge in this case said, fine, I certify this class. And therefore, now I have agreed with the other judges who've said that birthright citizenship is part of the Constitution. And I'm applying it across the country using this class action lawsuit that, in theory, is in conformance with what the Supreme Court says had to happen. Now, what that means is then we'll have a 50-state consistent rule for the moment while they continue to litigate this decision. Before today, you had some states where birthright citizenship might be recognized and some states where it wouldn't be recognized. And what the judge says is you can't do that because it doesn't make any sense to have somebody be a citizen if they're born in Massachusetts, but not if they're born in, say, Texas.